Greetings, dear friends. This is Becoming Impactful, and I'm your host, Anthony Nayagan. And today we have as our guest Dr. Jonathan Tuck, all the way from Scotland. He is my dear friend and a colleague, and we have known him for quite a while. So let me make an introduction. John is a physicist and a material scientist and the holistic energy scientist. He did his PhD at the University of Oxford in energy and material science, and that is going beyond his theoretical physics. After working many years in scientific industries, he also completed a business training course, and he started practicing as a business coach, executive coach. He's a fascinating man, and especially when I'm going to introduce his book. There it is, A Theory of Everything. And I'm going to introduce this book to you today. You will come to know more about him and his ideas about quantum consciousness and science and quantum physics and all of that. You will come to know about him a lot better as we go forward. John, is there anything you want to add to this?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if it's going to come out, it'll come out in our discussion anyway, I'm sure.
Okay, all right. So let me start my first question. By the way, his name is spelled Jonathan and R. Tuck. T as in Tango, U, C as in Charlie, K as in Kite. Jonathan R. Tuck. That's his name. So let me ask the first question. Is it terribly cold in Scotland now?
Yes, it's been up and down. We've had some very cold weather, but with the snow on the mountains, on the peaks of the mountains, it's utterly, insanely beautiful.
Is it? I can
Yeah,
imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world.
it certainly is, and
Yeah,
steeped in much history.
yes,
And with many ancient sites of extremely high positive energy value, which is
yeah,
just incredible.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the history has a way of doing that, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, if we haven't, and if I fail to do that today, I recommend strongly to visit Scotland and enjoy the serenity, especially in the northern Scotland. It's absolutely sensational, very beautiful, and incredibly peaceful. That's my strong recommendation. Okay, now let's get back into our podcast. And I'm going to ask you uh, a question. After reading your book, I find you being brutally honest. See, being brutally honest means you need to be truly open and vulnerable. With that in perspective, how and why did you choose to write this book to your children as your direct audience?
yeah, it's a really interesting question and multifaceted. I think my brutal honesty is in line with authenticity, and I've known for a long time that authenticity is one of the most powerful places you can step into
Mhm.
from a spiritual perspective.
Yes.
So I'm aware that, and all throughout the writing of my book, I was aware that just how powerful that was, and how important honesty and openness is, and particularly in conveying to my children.
Yep.
So I, I, since I wrote my book, I've intended to walk my talk. It wasn't easy, because I caught myself not necessarily adhering to the things that even I had said, but that can be pretty normal. But throughout the course of writing the book, I wanted to be as honest as I possibly could in order not only to convey that authenticity, but also to be as useful as I possibly could.
Awesome. That's authenticity. Yeah. Let me ask you the next question. I love the title of this book. Could you describe your thought process on how you arrived at this title?
Absolutely. The book was originally, I was originally encouraged to write the book. I coincided with a sabbatical I was taking, and I I attended a so-called ADHD workshop for my two sons, my youngest son Alex, and I was absolutely intrigued by the child psychologist, double PhD child psychologist, Linda Malone, who took the course, and everything she said really resonated with me from a perspective of truth. And I wasn't used to that with conventional psychology and things like that. And I was so excited that I couldn't stop talking. And after the first day of the course, she said, "John, you're going to have to shut up now, but I want you to write a book."
Okay.
And that's where it started. And originally, I wrote the book for three people. Well, four if you include Linda. Three people: my sons and myself. Now, I knew that it may possibly be useful to a wider audience, but originally that was my incentive. And I decided to call it at the time "Things I Wish I'd Known at Your Age," because one of my primary incentives was to capture everything that I'd learnt and researched and practiced and experienced, and to put that together into a text with all of the references that I used in order that I could, if nothing else, save my sons the time and heartache and the negative side of what I experienced in the mistakes I made for them moving forwards.
Right.
Although I was conscious at the time that they probably wouldn't read it for another 20 years anyway. So that was why it was as much for me as for them.
Yes.
When I was I worked with an editor. Basically, I wrote the first draft in about 3 months. And I sent it to Linda as a professional, just to make sure, because I'm not formally educated in human psychology.
Yes.
Everything I've done, I've learned from first principles, mainly as a result of studying other people and myself. So I sent it to Linda to say, and said, what do you think? Because, I wanted to make sure I wasn't talking nonsense.
Right.
And what she came back with was just mind-blowing. She said, if everybody or every parent in the world read this book, the world would be a better place.
Awesome.
And I just thought, well, wow, it's it. And then peers and friends said, oh, you just have to just publish it. But I really wanted to publish something more special. So I found an editor, friend of mine in the UK, also endowed in spiritual wisdom and education, also a nutritionalist. So she was able to help me a bit with that side of things. And I worked for 2 years with her, from 3 years even, 2017 to 2020, to I think it was 2020 when I first published. And in that time, I was also working with a marketing guy in Washington, D.C. Just a friend of mine I came across. I can't remember how, but I sent him one of the final edits of the book pre-publish, And he came back to me with, John, this isn't a book for children. This is a theory of everything.
Yeah.
And I like that. That resonated with me. I mean, I was a bit cautious because obviously Stephen Hawking has written the theory of everything.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I didn't want to. But anyway, as far as I was concerned, there was nothing that I'd left out of the book that made it anything other than a theory of everything, at least a theory of my everything, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm really, really happy to say that even to this day, in everything I've learnt and everything that's been going on in the community, I still don't think I left anything out, if not much at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So the theory of everything,
Yeah,
things I wish I would known at your age. The takeaway is, you see, if every parent writes this book, this world would be a better place. Let me add to that. If everybody reads this book,
yeah.
the
One
world
of one of the things I loved about what
is today. Yeah.
one of the things I loved about Linda's approach
Yeah.
was that in dealing with so-called ADHD for your children, it's not so much about them; it's about your own psychology as a parent.
Yeah. Yes.
Which was
Yeah. But John, I want to ask you because I mean, obviously I know, but the audience don't. So let me ask you another question. See, your accounts of personal struggles highlight your resilience and ability to overcome challenges. Well, while these things are detailed in your book, people encountering you for the first time may be unaware of your journey. So, could you share with them briefly what you had been through, um, health wise and psychologically and physiologically? And let's talk about it a little bit and introduce what I call your vulnerable side to your audience. Will you do that?
yeah, sure, and I'll try and be as concise as possible. I mean, it's a long
Okay.
story, and that's why I
Yeah.
wrote a book on it. But
Yeah. Well,
no, so um, in essence, I had a pretty serious accident
mhm,
when I was 8 years old.
mhm,
I had I fell off my push bike and I whacked my head on the curb of the road on the left hand side.
mhm,
My brain bounced across my head and caused a massive blood clot on the right hand side. Of course, I only found this out sometime later. It was a bit of a blur for me.
mhm,
I passed out on the way to the hospital, and um, I'll never forget my mother telling me sometime afterwards that she wished I'd been awake for the journey down to the neurological ward in the south of England because we had a police escort,
mhm,
which I would have loved to have seen if I'd have been not having a nap at the time. You know,
mhm,
I had the blood clot removed from my right side, but when I woke up, I was completely paralyzed. I was completely paralyzed in my right side, probably from the damage that was done to the left hand side of my brain at the time.
mhm,
I couldn't talk. I could barely move. I used to have communication methods where I'd touch my nose if I wanted something or something like that, you know. And because, fast forward a little bit, because I was still growing at the age of 8,
mhm,
the growth in my right side was stunted.
mhm,
So my right side didn't grow as quickly as my left side. So that had numerous ramifications, the majority of which was significant operation surgical work on my right side in order to increase the length in my tendons
mhm,
in order to help me walk properly. The positive side of it was, though, that because when I woke up, I could only use my left side, and I'm predominantly right-handed. It forced me to become um, ambidextrous. It forced me to even to this day, I drink with my left hand. I use both hands. And it wasn't until maybe 10, even 20 years later that I realized the significant importance of that position, because what it meant was that I was extremely left brain, right brain balanced, which has helped me tremendously as I've grown up. Again, fast forward a lot further, I had approximately 7 or 8 major operations on my right side to correct the limb deficiency, mainly tendon extension operations. And by the age of 30, I consented to have an inch removed from my left femur in order to finally balance the length in my left and right leg. The operation was deemed a success. However, the result was deemed a failure. And it wasn't until last year when I had a kinetic chain release appointment that the real effect of the operation became apparent when I had my pelvis realigned. So when my pelvis was out, which it has been for most of my adult life, although they'd corrected the length deficiency, because the pelvis was unbalanced, you still saw a deficiency. So it's only recently that I've actually been able to start to walk without a limp. And it gets better and better and better with all of the other stuff that I'm doing, much of which I've talked about in my book.
Huh. Well, it takes a lot of resilience and a lot of growing up.
I mean, one thing I will say is that it was an extremely traumatic accident, and very much so for my parents, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because without it, I couldn't see myself in the position I'm in now with the knowledge that I have. So I'm extremely grateful.
I mean, even though your brain, head, your body, and everything went through such a trauma, look at yourself. I mean, you had been to Oxford, you turned out to be a physicist, and you did your PhD, and you really made it happen. I mean, that takes a lot of resilience, a lot of hard work, a lot of focus, and, you know, lots of those things. So we need to be very grateful for what you have been through and what you have evolved into. You say, as it boils down to it at the bottom, the bottom line, we call it here in the US. Look, it's not really as relevant what we had been through, but what is more relevant is what we have evolved into. You see, and you have evolved into someone spectacular. So there is more reason to feel grateful, I think.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for everything that I've been able to do and see, and the drive that I've had. And it comes really from that one gift that I was given at 8 years old, and I'm so grateful.
Thank you. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm so happy to hear you say that. You just described your trials as your gift. It's beautiful. It takes a lot of realization to describe our trials as a gift. Beautiful. Anyway, so I want to talk about other things today. But before I do that, let me reintroduce the book to you again. It is the Theory of Everything by Dr. Jonathan Tuck, and it is Things I Wish I Had Known at Your Age. You can find this book in Amazon and also ask your bookstores to order that book for you. But it is available in Amazon. I got it from Amazon myself. Okay. So thank you, and thank you for considering buying this book. But then before I finish this, I want to ask a couple of two more questions. Okay. The first one is in your email signature, you are writing a quote of Nikola Tesla. It says the day science begins to study non-physical phenomenon, it will make more progress than it made in all previous centuries of its existence. Our entire biological system, the brain, and the earth itself work on the same frequencies. Dr. Tuck, can you go delve a little deeper into this, please?
Yeah, I think, you know, um, what what Nikola Tesla knew
Mhm.
um, goes way beyond um, just his incredible inventions and the remarkable science that he did
Mhm.
in those early days.
Mhm.
I think it's also in line with some of the great quantum physicists, such as Niels Bohr,
Yeah,
who said that everything we call real is made of things we cannot be regarded as real,
yeah.
which is another of my quotes in my email signature.
Yes, yes, it is. It
And
is.
and I think in the highest level, because it's an extremely deep subject that could take days to even brush the surface with.
Yeah.
At the highest level, what it's saying is that everything in the entire universe, everything,
Mhm.
is intimately connected to itself as one vast symbiotic organism, which which includes humanity and, more importantly, consciousness. And I think what Nikola Tesla, or where many people overlook Nikola Tesla, is that at least I'm certain he was absolutely connected in a spiritual
Yeah. I,
sense
he-
to source, to his higher self, to his intuition, and to um, a, a a connection which ultimately we can all have with a divine, a self, our soul connection.
yeah. Yeah. That
I don't know if that explains it in the bigger
it's
picture. Yeah.
incredibly deep, spiritually deep, and there's no question. I mean, I have read many things about Nikola Tesla, and I have no doubt in my mind he was a very spiritually evolved man. I consider him a mystic, and his statements are so incredibly futuristic. It's incredible. It's totally incredible. Um, that kind of leads me to another question that I really wanted to talk to you more about, and I want you to take your time answering this question. But this question is going to be a little long, Fred. And so let me go into the question. See, the world as we see it is rapidly transforming into a quantum paradigm, particularly as numerous spiritual mysteries and enigmas are being validated or reframed through modern scientific advancements, particularly in quantum theories. Yet, many academic and intellectual frameworks remain entrenched in Newtonian mechanics rather than embracing the potential of quantum perspectives. So, from a scholarly standpoint, how do you interpret this shift and its implications, and how do you envision this happening?
Yeah, I think it's already happening. And I think that again in the bigger picture, because how deep do you want to go? But in the bigger picture, one of the things I've been conscious of for a long time, perhaps all of my life. When I was about 14, I knew and knew that something really quite magical was going to happen in my lifetime. I didn't know what it was. I just knew. And I've been down the rabbit hole, and I've gone to the deepest depths of darkness. And one of the resources that pulled me out of that darkness quite rapidly was a lot of the documentaries and videos that Dolores Cannon produced. So Dolores Cannon, particularly Entering the New Earth, which goes hand in hand with many of the premonitions that have been circulating for hundreds of years surrounding the Golden Era, the Age of Aquarius. And the more I researched into that and the more I understood about energy, about the planetary movements and um, and stuff like that. The more I bought into the fact that the Age of Aquarius is happening. It's real. And one thing that is really encouraging about that is that there's pretty much nothing anyone on Earth can do about this spiritual and conscious revolution. So as far as I'm aware, we are being assisted at this time by the energies from Source and from the Sun and from various other sources in what is a global awakening of humanity. So and we can see this happening. We're experiencing chaos at the moment, and it was meant to be that way because mathematically order can only be derived from chaos. So we are experiencing that chaos, and in some respects it's quite horrific. But in the bigger picture, it's really quite an amazing thing, and particularly in line with what is known as the Chinese Year of the Snake, which we have moved into, where the snake sheds its old skin.
Right.
And that is what we're going through at the moment. And we have a lot of assistance from external sources, but we still have to do this ourselves. What this means is that we best position ourselves to support those around us and in our communities as they begin to wake up as a result of the higher frequency energy that they're receiving, in order to make their journeys less traumatic and more fluid, more harmonious, and also to combine the vibrational frequency of our combined consciousness. So, yeah, that's my bigger picture perspective of what's happening on Earth. I mean, it's a lot more detailed than that, but that's the bigger picture overview.
In other words, what you are saying is, although our mindfulness, we are as ordered and structured in a sort of a Newtonian mechanics. In order for us to embrace the quantum consciousness, we need to go through a lot of unlearning, as you described, the snake has to shed.
Yes.
So what you are saying is that unlearning is important for us to embrace what is out there. Could you go into?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. But in many respects and for many people, that unlearning is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Without the tools and knowledge to be able to access what you're describing as what is contained within our subconscious.
Right.
So our conscious minds are, I mean, as you know, a very small part of our mind.
Yeah.
And everything that all of the belief systems that we attribute to ourselves, all of the behavioral patterns, all of the what causes us to behave and think in the ways we do is locked deep inside our subconscious.
Right.
And the only way there are many, many different ways you can access your subconscious, work with your subconscious, but fundamentally you need to be aware that there's that situation going on and why you behave the way you do, even though in your conscious you think something very different. So when I was about 14, I realized that, and I became extremely frustrated by the fact that it would appear that I didn't learn anything ever.
Yeah.
I'd say to myself, right, I'm not going to do that again, and then I'd do it again. And I was like, what's that all about? That's just insane. I'm not going to do that, and then I do it again, and it's like, and I'm like, you stupid. And I thought, hang on a minute, there's got to be something else. So what I decided to do, because I recognised that in my peers and friends too, they would talk like this and then act like that, you know. And I'm like, well, at least I'm not alone. So what I did was I decided to study what I learned to be psychology of my friends and peers to see if I could work out why they believed in their conscious something which they didn't actually bring to fruition in their lives or in their everyday day-to-day existence. And I thought, you know, if I can at least work out why they do it, then I can apply it to myself and I can learn how to change myself to be who I believed I ultimately should be. So one of the lectures or seminars, workshops that I do is becoming the you that you were born to become.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that's all about working with your deep subconscious in the most harmonious way, and without having to experience trauma that some practitioners and have worked with.
Yeah.
So, you know, that, and as I said, there are many different ways of doing it. And I'm presenting just one way that's absolutely worked for me, because for me, I don't experience trauma. And even if I do, I can remove the negative associated with negative memories, because that's essentially what you're dealing with. It's your subconscious is a big memory bank. So your subconscious is your hard drive.
In spirituality, the most important step, in other words, the most important milestone, is to realize your authentic self.
Yes, absolutely.
See, unless you realize your authentic self, true creativity and innovation and all of those things are going to be stagnated.
And that is absolutely hand in hand with authenticity, as we started this discussion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's authenticity and the honesty and of knowing who you really are is fundamental to spirituality, fundamental to creativity and innovation and leadership.
It's kind of hand in hand with, until you truly love yourself, you cannot love others.
Yes.
So until you can be truly honest with yourself, you cannot be truly honest with others.
No, you cannot.
You might not want to be sometimes, but won't get into that.
See, to add to what you just said, see, remaining in love with yourself requires a lot of learning.
Yes.
See, unless your knowledge keeps on increasing, love cannot sustain itself. It'll fall apart. So even if you're denied to know more about yourself, then that means you're not loving yourself as much.
It goes hand in hand. Yeah, absolutely.
It goes hand in hand.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you really have to seek that knowledge about yourself always. And that is,
particularly the elements that require healing, that require love.
Yes.
Particularly the traumas that you hold deep inside of you, which could be from this lifetime, probably when you're between the age of in the womb and 2 or 10 years old,
Yeah,
but even past lifetimes and ancestral life
absolutely.
traumas.
I
So,
mean, look, it's, you know, even though the church wants to interpret it differently, but what Jesus says is our life is eternal.
yeah, yeah,
And when you talk about eternity, it does not have a beginning. It does not have an end.
yes,
That's what eternity is.
yes.
To assume that our life began in our mother's wombs is very contradictory to what Jesus says, that our life is eternal.
Yeah,
So we had life before we were born into this world. And those lives had memories, those life had meanings, and those life had experiences, and those life had all sorts of things entrenched in it. And that's how we were born. We were not, born empty of all of those things. You see, our life is eternal.
yeah.
And be able to go back into our lives with this life, with previous lives, and all of that is incredibly meaningful and is necessary. See, that is what spirituality is going to help you do. That is what embracing your subconscious mind as your gateway to, spiritual journey is going to take you into. You
And I
see?
think that alludes also to the ultimate bigger picture
Yeah.
of what is happening right now, because I think for the first time in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years,
Mhm.
we are being offered the opportunity of ultimate
Mhm.
ascension.
Mhm.
So not having to come back to Earth ever again,
Yeah.
um, to ascend ultimately, which for many people will not be what they need at this time or what they want. But I think for a lot of people, or should I say spirits,
Mhm.
this will be a very, very exciting period, led to believe that it's possible that we will all ascend at the same time. But for now, personally, I just get on with the day to day stuff and my goal, which is to, in the bigger picture, again, help as many people as I can with the gifts that I've been given, of the wisdoms that I have and the knowledge that I have,
Mhm.
whilst at the same time remaining humble and open to anything. Because, as they say, the one thing that is certain is change,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, with that, this podcast is coming to an end. And thank you, Jonathan, for joining us and meeting our audience. Uh,
Thank you. Thanks very much
means a
indeed,
lot
Anthony. It's been a pleasure.
here. Thank you. Thank you. And please, go to Amazon and search for his book, The Theory of Everything by
It's
Dr.
a theory of everything, not the theory of
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, A Theory of Everything.
Yeah.
Because, uh,
I'm not
you know,
Stephen Hawkins, and I wouldn't
yeah,
even pretend to be.
yeah, The
Although
Theory of
I do
Everything is by
understand
Stephen
his,
Hawking.
I do understand Stephen Hawking's ability to see in 11 dimensions. That
Yeah, yeah,
way ahead of his time. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It is
Well,
truly amazing.
I'm not him, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, A Theory of Everything.
thank you.
The Theory of Everything is by Stephen Hawking. So this is A Theory of Everything by Dr. Jonathan Tubb. Research for that book. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us, and I really appreciate it.